As we prepare for our fifth gathering, as we study and discuss the Westminster Confession of Faith, we're considering chapters 25 to 31. In a real sense, this is a section where it's helpful to be attentive to the nature of this as a Reformed confession of faith within Catholic Western Christianity. Both the terms Reformed and Catholic are crucial here. We see the hallmarks of Protestant teaching, particularly teaching regarding the sole authority of Scripture as our final rule for faith and practice, and the nature of Christ's all-sufficient mediation. As we turn to issues of ecclesiology and government, and we consider matters of sacraments and the life of corporate piety, both of these are crucial. I want to simply foreground a couple things for you to be alert to as you read and think and pray and prepare to gather in your own groups this time. First, observe the way in which we might think the Puritans expect perfection. And yet, central to the image of the church here is the idea of the church distinguished between visible and invisible. The church we see and perceive with the eye, the visible church, that is empirically obvious, we might say, it is not the same as the invisible communion of saints. A communion that includes those who are deceased and gone and with the Lord now. A communion that includes those who may or may not appear to be within the walls of the church at this time. A communion that in every case includes men and women who are still pilgrims on the way, not yet perfected and completely transformed. And so this is elemental to shaping appropriate expectations. It's a reminder on the one hand that this Protestant and Reformed confession of faith is very much an Augustinian and Western Catholic doctrine. It's shaped by Augustine's teaching in texts like City of God and elsewhere, his anti-Pelagian writings, where we understand that we do not achieve perfection individually or corporately in this life. We are no longer in Egypt, thank God, but we're not yet in Canaan. We are likened, according to 1 Corinthians 10 and Hebrews 3 and 4, unto the Israelites journeying through the wilderness. We want to journey faithfully and perseveringly, unlike so many of them. We see here the nature of the invisible and visible distinction being absolutely central to understanding realistically what the church is today. We see also the effect of this in chapter 27 and elsewhere on the sacraments. This is a document and a theological framework that is very much concerned about the Donatist or perfectionistic temptation. The Donatists were a group in the era of late antiquity who believed that any pastor who later fell in a significant way, who gave in, for instance, and committed apostasy in the face of temptation, that not only were they judged, but actually any of their sacramental action was deemed to be ineffective. In other words, if I fall tomorrow, people I've baptized yesterday are not baptized. People I've ordained in the past are not ordained. This is a significant challenge, and Augustine of Hippo proved to be the great vanquisher of the Donatist threat. And yet we observe through the ages the temptation reappears in slightly different forms. Whether it's in the form of a intense perfectionist zeal in the Anabaptist radicalism of the 16th century, or in later perfectionistic movements of the 20th century in various pockets around the church across the globe. We see here in chapter 27 that sacramental efficacy is dependent on Jesus Christ, the mediator of the sacraments, not on human administrators. Pastoral morality matters. We care greatly for the integrity of office. Those are no small things, and the confession doesn't minimize them or suggest that they matter not. There's great tragedy that befalls us when pastors play poorly. We see in the news, and too many of us observe far too close to home, the terrible human cost that can ensue when pastors don't lead lives of wholeness and integrity. And yet, acknowledging that, naming that, taking that prayerfully before God is not the same as suggesting that that thereby undercuts the effectiveness of ministry those pastors may have had in the past. And so we see the confession striking out in an Augustinian and a Protestant Reformed way against that Donatist threat to affirm that sacraments are effective because they are a gift of Jesus Christ, administered in his name and in his power. And so we see here, again, a view of sacraments, of ministerial office, of the nature of the church and her membership that is dependent in every respect upon God's grace, particularly shown to us in Jesus Christ. As we read these passages and as we explore those topics of church, of office, of sacramental life, let's have an eye for the way in which this is rooted on and built upon the nature of Christ's mediation alone.